Get your hands behind your back, now! Stop resisting or I will put you on the pavement! Officer Miles Beckett screamed, spit flying, his hand hovering over his taser. I am not resisting, the woman said, her voice terrifyingly calm, her eyes like flint. But you are making the biggest mistake of your career, officer. Save the threats for the judge, honey, Austin Ward sneered, yanking her arm until the shoulder popped. We know what you are. You people always think you can steal the world and walk away. Click. The handcuffs locked. The nightmare began. The air inside Velour and Vault, the city's most exclusive luxury boutique, smelled of crushed lavender, old money, and quiet judgment. It was a scent Eliza Vaughn knew well. It was the smell of spaces where she was tolerated, but never welcomed. Today, however, Eliza wasn't Captain Vaughn of the 12th Precinct. She wasn't the decorated officer who had dismantled the North Side trafficking ring, or the woman who had stared down armed robbers without blinking. Today, she was just Eliza. She was wearing a comfortable, nondescript beige trench coat over a simple tracksuit, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. It was her day off, her first in 3 months, and she was on a mission to buy a retirement gift for her mentor, the deputy chief. She moved through the aisles, her fingers hovering over Italian leather bags and Swiss chronographs. She had her eye on a specific fountain pen, a limited edition mahogany piece that sat behind a glass case near the back. From the moment she stepped onto the plush cream carpet, the atmosphere shifted. It was subtle, a frequency change only a predator or prey would notice. Eliza was a bit of both. She felt the eyes on her back before she saw them. Standing near the fragrance counter was Austin Ward. He was the store's loss prevention officer, a man who wore his uniform 2 sizes too tight to accentuate gym muscles that hadn't seen functional use in years. Ward didn't glance. He stared. He tracked her movement with the intensity of a man hunting game, his jaw set in a permanent sneer of suspicion. He held a radio close to his chest, murmuring into it every time Eliza shifted her weight. Eliza paused at a display of silk scarves, picking up a teal one. The fabric was cool against her skin. Can I help you with anything, ma'am? Eliza turned. A young sales associate, her name tag reading Mila Ford, stood there. Mila looked terrified. Her hands were clasped so tightly in front of her that her knuckles were white. Mila wasn't looking at Eliza with suspicion. She was looking past Eliza, toward the security mirrors where the store manager, Zachary Holt, was watching like a hawk. I'm looking for the Mont Blanc series, Eliza said, her voice warm, trying to put the girl at ease. The 1920s reissue. Mila swallowed hard. Oh, that's in the high security case. Mr. Holt usually handles those transactions. Then I'd like to speak to Mr. Holt, Eliza said pleasantly. Mila hesitated. She leaned in, dropping her voice to a whisper. Ma'am, honestly, maybe you should try the department store downtown. They have a good selection too. It's just, Mr. Holt is in a mood today. Eliza studied the girl's face. She saw the genuine fear there. Mila was trying to warn her. She was trying to tell her to leave before the sharks started circling. But Eliza Vaughn didn't run. She had earned the right to be here. She had the money in her bank account, money earned from 15 years of serving a city that often didn't love her back. I'll wait for Mr. Holt, Eliza said firmly. Mila nodded, looking defeated, and scurried off toward the back office. Eliza turned back to the mirror, catching Austin Ward's reflection. He wasn't hiding it anymore. He had moved closer, standing in the middle of the aisle, arms crossed, blocking the easy path to the exit. He wanted her to know he was watching. It was an intimidation tactic, rank and amateur. Eliza had interrogated cartel hitmen who had better poker faces than Austin Ward. A moment later, Zachary Holt emerged. He was a man who looked like he was made of oil and cheap cologne. He wore a suit that cost more than a patrol car, but he wore it without grace. He didn't smile. He walked straight up to Eliza, not offering a hand, not offering a greeting. "Mila says you want to see the Mont Blanc," Holt said, his tone flat. He looked at her sweatpants, then at her sneakers. He didn't look her in the eye. "I'd like to buy it," Eliza corrected, "if it's in stock." "It's $5,000, Holt said. He let the number hang in the air, a challenge. He expected her to flinch. He expected her to make an excuse and leave. Eliza didn't blink. She pulled her wallet from her purse, a simple leather wallet but organized. She extracted her black credit card. "I know the price. Wrap it up, please. Red ribbon." Holt stared at the card. He looked at Ward, who was now just 10 feet away, hand resting on his belt. A silent communication passed between them. "She's bluffing, or it's stolen." "I'll need to see ID," Holt said, snatching the card from her hand rather than taking it. "And we'll need to run a verification check. It might take a while." "Take your time," Eliza said, leaning against the glass counter. "I'm not going anywhere." She watched Holt walk away with her card and ID. She watched Ward step closer, invading her personal space. She felt the trap being laid, the rusty gears of prejudice grinding into motion. They thought she was trapped in here with them. They had no idea they were locking themselves in a cage with a lioness. The verification check took 20 minutes. In retail time, that was an eternity. In police time, it was a deliberate provocation. Eliza stood by the counter, her posture perfect, her face impassive. She used the time to observe the store's security layout. Cameras in the corners, blind spot near the changing rooms, single point of entry, no visible fire exit in the rear retail space. Austin Ward hadn't moved. He was practically breathing down her neck. "You know," Ward said, his voice a low, gravelly taunt, "we catch people like you every week." Eliza turned her head slowly. "People like me?" "Shoppers," Ward smirked, but the venom was clear. "People who come in here to look at shiny things they can't afford, waiting for a moment to slip something into a pocket. But not on my watch." "I haven't slipped anything anywhere," Eliza said calmly. "And unless you have probable cause, you're harassing a paying customer. That's a liability, Mr. Ward." Ward's eyes narrowed. "How do you know my name?" "It's on your badge," Eliza said. "The one that's pinned crookedly to your shirt." Ward flushed a deep, angry red. He took a step forward, closing the gap to an aggressive 2 feet. "You got a smart mouth. I don't like smart mouths." Before the escalation could peak, Zachary Holt returned. He looked disappointed. The card had cleared. The ID was valid. He held the small, heavy bag containing the pen as if it were contaminated waste. "Receipt," Holt grunted, slapping the paper onto the counter. He shoved the card and ID back toward her. "You're done here." "Thank you," Eliza said, her voice ice-cold. She picked up the bag. She placed her wallet back in her purse. "Your customer service is memorable, Mr. Holt. I'll be sure to mention it." "Just get out," Holt muttered, turning his back on her. Eliza picked up the bag and began the long walk to the exit. Her heart was beating a little faster, the adrenaline of suppressed anger coursing through her. She just wanted to get to her car, drive home, and forget that men like Holt and Ward existed. She reached the heavy glass doors. Mila Ford was standing by the entrance, holding a bottle of glass cleaner. She looked at Eliza with sad, apologetic eyes. "Have a nice day, ma'am," she whispered. "You too, Mila," Eliza said softly. Eliza stepped through the sensors. Beep, 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 beep. The alarm shrieked. It was a piercing, rhythmic wail that stopped every pedestrian on the sidewalk outside. Inside the store, silence fell. Eliza froze. She knew she hadn't taken anything. She knew the pen had been deactivated. She had watched Holt do it. "Hold it right there," Austin Ward yelled. The joy in his voice was sickening. He had been waiting for this. Eliza turned slowly, hands visible. "The sensor is malfunctioning. I paid for this item." "Don't give me that crap," Ward shouted, rushing toward her. He wasn't alone. From the street, a uniformed police officer was already sprinting toward the door. It was Officer Miles Beckett. Eliza recognized him immediately. Beckett was a transfer from the 14th, known for excessive force complaints that somehow always vanished before they reached internal affairs. He was Ward's friend. Eliza had seen them fist bump through the window earlier. This was a setup, a coordinated, clumsy, arrogant setup. Beckett burst through the doors, hand already on his baton. "Ma'am, step back inside. Put the bag on the floor, now!" "Officer," Eliza said, pitching her voice to be heard over the alarm. "I am complying. I am placing the bag down." She slowly lowered the gift bag to the floor. "I have the receipt in my hand." "Back up!" Beckett barked, shoving her backward. The force was unnecessary and aggressive. Eliza stumbled slightly but regained her footing instantly, her combat training kicking in. She balanced her weight, her hands raised to chest level, non-threatening, but ready. "I am an unarmed civilian making a purchase," Eliza stated clearly. She was speaking for the cameras now. "I have committed no crime. You are escalating a situation that does not require force." "Shut up!" Ward yelled. He was standing next to Beckett now, looking like the cat that caught the canary. "She stole a scarf. I saw her. She put it in her coat." "That is a lie," Eliza said, looking Ward dead in the eye. "I touched a scarf. I put it back. Check your cameras." "We don't need to check anything," Beckett spat. He was energized by Ward's accusation. He saw a black woman in a tracksuit in a high-end store with an alarm blaring. To him, the math was simple. "Turn around, hands on your head. We're searching you." "You will not," Eliza said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming the voice of the captain. "You do not have probable cause for a search of my person. You may check the bag. You may check the receipt. But you will not touch me." Beckett laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "I don't need your permission, thief. I'm the law. And I'm telling you," Eliza said, "that you are about to cross a line you can't uncross." Beckett didn't listen. He lunged. The moment Officer Miles Beckett put his hands on her, Eliza Vaughn had to make a choice. She could have dropped him. It would have been easy. A simple wrist lock, a shift of leverage, and he would have been face first on the marble floor. She knew 12 different ways to incapacitate a man of his size in under 3 seconds. But she also knew what happened when a black woman, even a cop, fought back against a uniform. She would be shot or tased, and the narrative would be, "Suspect assaulted an officer." So she went rigid. She let him grab her. Beckett spun her around with jarring force, slamming her chest against the display window. The glass shuddered. Outside, a crowd was gathering. Phones were out. The red lights of recording indicators were like 100 tiny eyes witnessing her shame. "Stop resisting!" Beckett screamed for the benefit of the audience, though Eliza was standing perfectly still. "I am not resisting," she repeated loud and clear. "My name is Eliza Vaughn. I am asking you to check my identification in my back pocket." "I don't care who you are!" Beckett grunted, kicking her legs apart. He patted her down roughly, his hands lingering too long, searching for the stolen merchandise. He reached into her deep coat pocket and pulled out nothing. "Where is it?" Ward demanded, panic flickering in his eyes. "I saw her take it. The teal scarf." Beckett checked the other pocket. Nothing. He checked her waistband. Nothing. The alarm was still blaring, a headache-inducing soundtrack to the violation. "Check her purse!" Ward shouted, pointing to the bag Eliza had dropped. Beckett abandoned the pat-down and dumped the contents of her purse onto the floor. Her wallet, her keys, her phone, a pack of gum, and her feminine hygiene products scattered across the expensive carpet. It was a deliberate humiliation. Mila Ford, standing by the register, let out a sob. "Stop it! She didn't take anything!" Quiet, Mila, Zachary Holt snapped, stepping out from the back. He looked nervous now. The stolen item wasn't appearing. Beckett snatched up Eliza's wallet. He didn't open it to look for a badge. He didn't look at the ID. He just threw it aside as non-evidence. It's in her clothes, Ward insisted, doubling down. She must have tucked it into her bra or something. You need to arrest her, Miles. Take her in. Strip search. Eliza's blood ran cold. Strip search. The words hung in the air like a threat of violence. Beckett grabbed her wrist, twisting it behind her back. Click. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into her skin. You are under arrest for shoplifting and resisting a peace officer, Beckett announced, breathless with exertion. Eliza didn't scream. She didn't cry. A strange, cold calm settled over her. This was it. They had done it. They had bypassed every off-ramp she had offered them. They had ignored her calm. They had ignored the lack of evidence. And they had ignored her request to check her ID. Officer Beckett, Eliza said, her face pressed against the glass. I want you to listen to me very carefully. My wallet is on the floor. Open it. Look at the second flap. Shut up. Beckett yanked her away from the window. You have the right to remain silent, so use it. He began to march her toward the door. The crowd outside parted, jeering and filming. Eliza Vaughn, a woman who commanded respect from mayors and senators, was being frog-marched out of a boutique like a common criminal. As they passed Austin Ward, the security guard leaned in, a smug grin plastered on his face. Told you, not on my watch. Eliza paused. She planted her feet. Beckett tried to shove her, but she was solid as a rock. She turned her head and looked Ward in the eye. You're right, Ward, she said. This is happening on your watch. And it's going to be the last thing that ever happens on your watch. Move! Beckett shoved her through the door and onto the sidewalk. The sunlight hit her face. The heat of the city rushed in. Beckett marched her to his patrol car, parked illegally on the curb. He opened the back door and shoved her inside. The hard plastic seat was uncomfortable. The smell of stale vomit and disinfectant filled her nose. As Beckett slammed the door, Eliza saw him tap his body camera. He smirked. He thought he was being slick. He had just muted the audio. Or maybe he turned it off entirely. Eliza sat in the back of the cruiser. Her hands were numb. Her shoulder throbbed. But her mind was razor sharp. She shifted her weight, maneuvering her hands behind her back to reach into her back pocket. She hadn't told them about the phone in her back pocket, her burner phone, the one she used for undercover ops. Beckett had missed it in his sloppy, aggressive pat-down. She couldn't call for help. Not yet. She needed to let this play out. She needed them to book her. She needed the paperwork filed. She needed the ink dry on their lies. But she looked out the window and saw a young teenager holding a phone up, filming right against the glass. Eliza locked eyes with the camera. She nodded once. Record everything, she thought. In the front seat, Beckett climbed in. Austin Ward leaned into the window. Good catch, Miles, Ward said. Make sure you write up that she was aggressive. I'll back you up. We'll say she swung at me. Don't worry, Beckett laughed, starting the engine. I know how to write a report. This bitch isn't seeing daylight for 48 hours. Eliza closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. 48 hours, she thought. Boys, you won't last 48 minutes once I make my call. The cruiser pulled away from the curb. Eliza Vaughn was going to jail. And God help the precinct that tried to process her. The ride to the 14th precinct was a masterclass in petty tyranny. Officer Miles Beckett drove with aggressive, jerky movements, accelerating too hard at green lights and slamming on the brakes at reds, tossing Eliza around the back seat like a rag doll. The handcuffs bit deeper into her wrists with every jolt, but Eliza didn't make a sound. She sat perfectly upright, staring at the back of Beckett's head, memorizing every detail. The grease on his collar, the way he constantly checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, the smug set of his jaw. "You're quiet back there," Beckett taunted, eyeing her in the mirror. "Usually you people are screaming about your rights by now. Lawyer this, lawsuit that." "I know my rights," Eliza said, her voice steady and low. "And I know yours, officer. I know you're required to buckle in a detainee. I know you're speeding in a non-emergency zone. And I know you just texted on your personal phone while operating a department vehicle." Beckett laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Oh, we got a legal scholar. You think a judge is going to care about a seatbelt when you're facing grand larceny and assaulting an officer? Grand larceny requires the theft of property valued over $1,000, Eliza recited effortlessly. A silk scarf is valued at $300. That's petty theft, misdemeanor, and assaulting an officer requires physical contact initiated by the suspect. Your body camera, if you haven't deleted the footage, will show I never touched you." Beckett slammed on the brakes as they pulled into the precinct sally port, throwing Eliza forward against the cage. "Shut up. You want a felony? I'll find something. Resisting arrest is a felony if I say you reached for my gun." The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It was the oldest trick in the dirty cop playbook, a terrifying trump card that had ruined countless lives. But Eliza didn't flinch. She just filed it away in her mental dossier. Threat to fabricate evidence. Threat of deadly force. He hauled her out of the car, gripping her bicep hard enough to bruise. They walked through the back entrance, the familiar smell of the station hitting Eliza, stale coffee, floor wax, and misery. This wasn't her house. The 12th precinct was tight, disciplined, and respectful. The 14th was known as the Wild West, a place where transfers like Beckett went to hide their sins. They entered the booking area. It was chaotic. Phones were ringing, drunks were singing in the holding tank, and officers were shouting over the din. Beckett shoved Eliza toward the intake desk, where a tired-looking sergeant named Miller was typing slowly on a keyboard. "What do we have, Miles?" Miller asked, without looking up. "Shoplifting at Velour and Vault," Beckett announced loudly, puffing out his chest. "Suspect became combative, had to subdue her, resisting disorderly conduct and, let's add potential assault." Miller looked up, his eyes scanning Eliza. He frowned. He saw a woman in a trench coat and tracksuit, standing with a dignity that didn't match the charges. He saw the expensive sneakers. He saw the way she held her head. "She combative now?" Miller asked, eyeing the handcuffs. "She's a talker," Beckett sneered. "Thinks she's a lawyer or something." "Name?" Miller asked Eliza. Eliza looked at Miller. She recognized the type, burned out counting the days to pension, just wants a quiet shift. "I would like to speak to the watch commander, Sergeant." Beckett slammed his hand on the counter. "Give him your name, or you go in as Jane Doe, and you stay in the tank all weekend." "I am requesting to speak to the watch commander regarding an unlawful arrest," Eliza repeated, ignoring Beckett entirely. "And I am requesting that Officer Beckett be removed from my immediate vicinity for my safety." Miller paused. The language she used, immediate vicinity, unlawful arrest, was precise. It was cop talk. He narrowed his eyes. "Look, lady, just give me a name so we can process you. You want to make a complaint, you do it after booking." "My name," Eliza said slowly, "is Eliza Vaughn." She waited for a spark of recognition. Captain Eliza Vaughn was a rising star in the department. Her face had been in the internal newsletter last week for the commendation ceremony. Miller typed the name. He squinted at the screen. "Eliza Vaughn. No priors in the local system." "Check the personnel database," Eliza said softly. Beckett interrupted, grabbing her shoulder. "She's stalling. Just throw her in the cage, Sarge. I gotta go write this up and get Ward's statement before he leaves." Miller hesitated. He looked at the computer, then at Beckett, then at Eliza. The path of least resistance was to listen to the loud, aggressive officer. "All right, Miles. Put her in holding cell 2. I'll print her in a bit." You're making a mistake, Sergeant, Eliza warned, her voice hardening. Check the personnel database now. Move! Beckett shoved her toward the holding cells. He unlocked the heavy barred door of cell 2 and pushed her inside. The door clanged shut. The sound was final. Beckett grinned through the bars. Get comfortable, Eliza. It's going to be a long night. He turned and walked away, whistling. Eliza stood in the center of the cell. It was empty, save for a metal bench bolted to the wall. She waited until Beckett turned the corner. Then, she moved with lightning speed. She turned her back to the camera in the corner of the ceiling. She reached into her back pocket, her fingers dancing over the hidden seam where the burner phone was tucked. Beckett had been so focused on finding the scarf and humiliating her that he had missed the slim, flat device. She pulled it out. 3% battery, enough for one call. She didn't call a lawyer. She dialed a number she knew by heart. This is Laurent, a sharp female voice answered on the first ring. Eden, Eliza said, her voice dropping to a command whisper. Code 0, 14th precinct. I've been arrested by Officer Miles Beckett. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end, then the sound of a chair scraping back violently. Say that again, Captain? Wrongful arrest. Shoplifting charge. He used force. I'm in holding cell 2. Bring the team. And Eden? Bring the deputy chief. I'm 5 minutes out, Eden Laurent said, her voice trembling with cold fury. God help them. The line went dead. Eliza slid the phone back into her pocket. She sat down on the metal bench, crossed her legs, and closed her eyes. The clock was ticking. 20 minutes passed. To the officers of the 14th precinct, it was just another Tuesday evening. To Eliza Vaughn, it was the calm before the hurricane. From her cell, she watched the ecosystem of the station. She saw Beckett at a desk nearby, laughing with another officer as he typed up his report. He was pantomiming the arrest, exaggerating her resistance, making himself the hero who took down the unruly woman. Austin Ward had arrived. He was leaning over Beckett's desk, signing a statement. He looked nervous, his eyes darting around the room. The adrenaline of the confrontation had worn off, and now the reality of filing a false police report was settling in. But Beckett slapped him on the back, reassuring him. Don't worry, man, Eliza heard Beckett say. It's her word against ours, and she's a nobody. Who's gonna believe a shoplifter over a cop and a loss prevention manager? Eliza smiled grimly. A nobody. Sergeant Miller was still at the intake desk looking troubled. He kept glancing at the computer screen, then back at the cell where Eliza sat. Something was nagging at him. The name Eliza Vaughn was bouncing around in his head, scratching at a memory he couldn't quite place. Finally, Miller picked up the phone. He dialed a number. Eliza watched his lips move. Records. Yeah. Run a deep check. Vaughn. V-A-U-G-H-N. He listened. His face went pale. All the color drained out of his cheeks, leaving him looking like gray ash. He dropped the phone into the cradle as if it were hot. He looked at the cell. He looked at Eliza. She met his gaze and raised a single eyebrow. Miller scrambled out from behind the desk. He didn't walk. He practically ran toward Beckett. Miles! Miller hissed, grabbing Beckett's arm. Miles, stop typing! What? I'm almost done, Beckett said, annoyed. I'm just adding the part where she threatened me. Miles, shut up and listen to me, Miller whispered, his voice shaking. I just ran her through the main database, the state database. And? She got warrants? Beckett asked, hopeful. No, Miller said, swallowing hard. She's not a civilian, Miles. She's a cop. Beckett froze. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. What? She's sworn personnel, Miller said, sweat beading on his forehead. She's 12th precinct. Beckett blinked. Then he laughed nervously. So? She's a beat cop? A rookie? Doesn't matter. A cop steals? They go down harder. Blue Wall doesn't protect thieves. No, Miles. Miller grabbed Beckett's vest and pulled him close. She's not a beat cop. She's a captain. She's the commander of the 12th Precinct's Narcotics Division. The silence that fell over the desk was absolute. Austin Ward dropped his pen. It clattered loudly on the floor. You're joking, Beckett stammered. His face went from flushed to chalk white in a second. That's impossible. She didn't say anything. She didn't show a badge. She told you her name, Miller said, looking like he was about to be sick. She told you to check the personnel files. You threw a police captain in a cage, Miles. You handcuffed a superior officer. Beckett stood up, his knees knocking together. He looked toward the cell. Eliza was watching him. She wasn't glaring, she wasn't screaming. She was just watching, with the cold, detached interest of a coroner examining a corpse. I have to fix this, Beckett whispered. Panic seized him. We have to unarrest her. We have to delete the booking. Just let her go. We'll say it was a misunderstanding. It's too late, Ward squeaked, his voice cracking. I signed the statement. You logged the evidence. What evidence? Miller snapped. Where's the scarf? Beckett looked at the evidence bag on his desk. It was empty except for the receipt and the pen. I thought she hid it. I was going to find it later. You arrested a captain for theft with no evidence? Miller's voice rose to a shout. Suddenly, the front doors of the precinct burst open. It wasn't a normal entrance. It was an invasion. 4 officers in tactical gear entered first, securing the lobby. Behind them walked a woman in a sharp gray suit, Eden Laurent, Eliza's second-in-command. She looked like a Valkyrie ready to burn the world down. And behind her walked Deputy Chief Marcus Sterling, the second most powerful man in the city's police force. He was in full uniform, his brass stars gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. His face was a mask of thunder. "Attention on deck!" Sergeant Miller screamed, his voice cracking. Every officer in the room scrambled to stand at attention. The room went deathly silent. Beckett stood frozen, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Deputy Chief Sterling didn't look at Miller. He didn't look at Beckett. He walked straight to the center of the room and pointed a finger at the holding cells. "Who?" Sterling boomed, his voice shaking the walls. "Put my captain in a cage!" The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Who put my captain in a cage? No one moved. No one breathed. The air conditioning hummed, sounding like a roar in the silence. Officer Miles Beckett wanted to vanish. He wanted to dissolve into the floor tiles. He looked at Austin Ward, but the security guard was already backing away, trying to blend into a vending machine. Eden Laurent didn't wait for an answer. She marched past the intake desk, her heels clicking like gunshots on the linoleum. She went straight to cell 2. She looked through the bars at Eliza, her eyes softening for a fraction of a second before hardening back into steel. "Keys," Eden demanded, holding out her hand without looking back. Sergeant Miller fumbled with his belt, his hands trembling so badly he dropped the keys twice before sprinting over to hand them to her. "Ma'am, I didn't know. I swear." "Open it," Eden ordered. Miller unlocked the door. It swung open with a screech. Eliza Vaughn stood up. She smoothed the front of her trench coat. She walked out of the cell, stepping onto the precinct floor not as a prisoner, but as a conqueror. She didn't look tired. She didn't look broken. She looked dangerous. Eden handed Eliza a wet wipe. Eliza took it, wiping the precinct grime from her hands. Then she held out her wrists. They were red and chafed, angry welts rising where the cuffs had been too tight. Deputy Chief Sterling walked over. He looked at the wrists. His jaw tightened. He turned slowly to face the room. "Officer Beckett," Sterling said. It wasn't a question. It was a summons. Beckett stepped forward. He felt like he was walking to the gallows. "Sir, I can explain." "Explain," Eliza said. She spoke for the first time since her release. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. She walked toward Beckett, closing the distance. Explain to the chief how you observed a theft that never happened. Explain how you bypassed standard identification protocols. Explain why you refused to check my ID when I offered it to you 3 times. The loss prevention officer. Beckett stammered, pointing a shaking finger at Ward. He told me he saw it. He identified her. I was just backing up the call. Austin Ward froze. Me? No, you're the cop. You said, let's get her. I just thought she looked suspicious. Suspicious, Eliza repeated. She stopped 2 feet from Beckett. She was shorter than him, but in that moment, she towered over him. What exactly was suspicious, Officer Beckett? Was it my coat, my walk? Or was it the fact that a black woman was buying a $5,000 pen and you decided she didn't belong there? Beckett couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. You profiled me, Eliza said, her voice cutting like a scalpel. You and Mr. Ward decided I was a criminal before I even walked out the door. You wanted a bust. You wanted to feel powerful. And when I didn't give you a reason, you invented one. She turned to Eden. Lieutenant Laurent, did you bring it? Eden nodded. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. She tapped the screen and held it up. We pulled the Velour and Vault security feed remotely. We have a warrant for their cloud storage. On the screen, clear as day, the footage played. It showed Eliza looking at the scarf. It showed her placing it back on the rack. It showed her walking away empty-handed. It showed Ward watching her, talking into his radio. It showed Holt deactivating the pen. And it showed Ward leaning over the sensor panel by the door as Eliza approached, manually triggering the alarm button under the desk. A collective gasp went through the room. It was a setup, Sterling growled. Entrapment? False imprisonment? Filing a false report? Austin Ward looked like he was going to faint. I was just following Mr. Holt's instructions. He said we needed to deter certain elements. And you, Beckett, Sterling turned his glare on the officer. You didn't verify. You didn't investigate. You just attacked. You violated 4 different articles of the use of force continuum. I didn't know she was a captain, Beckett cried out, tears of panic welling in his eyes. If I had known that, Eliza interrupted, her voice booming, is the problem. You shouldn't have treated me like a human being because I'm a captain. You should have treated me like a human being because I am a citizen. The badge doesn't make me worthy of respect, officer. The law does, and you spit on both. She turned to Sterling. I want his badge. Now. Sterling nodded. Officer Beckett, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. Place your badge and gun on the desk. Chief, please, Beckett begged. It was a mistake. I have a mortgage. You have the right to remain silent, Eliza said, echoing the words he had spat at her earlier. I suggest you use it. Beckett, trembling and sobbing, unclipped his badge. He laid it on the desk. It made a hollow clack. Then his gun. Arrest them, Sterling ordered, gesturing to his tactical team. Both of them. Beckett for deprivation of rights under color of law, assault, and kidnapping. Ward for false imprisonment and conspiracy. As the handcuffs, the same cold steel cuffs used on Eliza, were slapped onto Beckett's wrists, he looked up at Eliza with pleading eyes. Captain Vaughn, please. Eliza looked at him. There was no pity in her eyes, only justice. Take them away, she said. As they dragged Beckett and Ward out, screaming and protesting, the precinct was silent. Every other officer stared at Eliza with a mixture of fear and awe. She turned to Sergeant Miller, who was still cowering behind the desk. Sergeant, Eliza said softly. Miller jumped. Yes. Yes, Captain? My record, she said. Clear it. Now. Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am. Miller typed furiously. Eliza took a deep breath. Her shoulders still throbbed. Her wrists burned. But she stood tall. She turned to Eden and Sterling. We're not done, Eliza said. We have one more stop to make. The store? Eden asked, a shark-like grin spreading across her face. The store, Eliza confirmed. Mr. Holt is waiting for his review. The sun had set, and the city lights were painting the streets in neon and shadow when the convoy rolled out. It wasn't just a patrol car this time. It was a procession of justice. 2 black SUVs, flanked by 3 marked cruisers, moved with silent, predatory purpose toward the luxury district. Inside the lead SUV, Eliza Vaughn adjusted the cuffs of her trench coat. The raw red marks on her wrists were hidden now, but the fire in her nerves hadn't faded. It had only refined into a cold, hard focus. Beside her sat Deputy Chief Sterling, his face grim, illuminated by the passing streetlights. "You don't have to do this part, Eliza," Sterling said quietly. "We can send a unit to pick him up. You can go home. Rest." Eliza looked out the window, watching the high-end storefronts blur by. "No, sir. He humiliated me in public. He weaponized the police force against me. I need him to see me one last time. I need him to know exactly who took him down." Eden Laurent, sitting in the front passenger seat, turned around. "We got the warrant for the store's financial records too, Captain. Forensic accounting is already flagging anomalies. You were right. It wasn't just racism. It was greed." Eliza nodded slowly. "Racism is often the cover for the oldest sins. He needed a scapegoat. He just picked the wrong one." The convoy pulled up to Velour and Vault. The store was still open, the evening shoppers mingling under the crystal chandeliers. The sudden arrival of 5 police vehicles, lights flashing but sirens silent, stopped traffic. Pedestrians froze, phones came out. The spectacle was reversing. The hunter was becoming the hunted. Eliza stepped out of the SUV. The night air was cool, but she felt nothing but heat. She walked toward the glass doors, the same doors she had been dragged through hours earlier. This time she wasn't alone. She was flanked by the Deputy Chief of Police and her lieutenant. Inside, the atmosphere shattered. Customers gasped and backed away as the uniformed officers filed in, securing the exits. Zachary Holt was standing near the jewelry counter, holding court with a wealthy couple, laughing at some joke. When he saw the uniforms, his smile faltered. When he saw Deputy Chief Sterling, he looked confused. And then he saw Eliza. She wasn't in handcuffs. She wasn't bowed. She was walking toward him with the stride of an executioner. Holt's face went pale, a stark contrast to his dark, expensive suit. He dropped the diamond necklace he was holding onto the velvet tray. His hands started to shake. "Mr. Holt," Eliza said, her voice projecting clearly across the silent store. "We meet again." I don't understand," Holt stammered, looking for Austin Ward, who was conspicuously absent. Why are you back? You were arrested." "I was kidnapped," Eliza corrected, stopping 3 feet from him. "Kidnapped by a corrupt officer acting on your false report. That officer is currently in a holding cell. So is your security guard, Mr. Ward." A murmur went through the customers. The wealthy couple Holt had been helping slowly backed away, sensing the radioactive toxicity of the moment. "This is harassment," Holt squeaked, trying to summon his earlier arrogance but failing miserably. "I am the manager of this boutique. You can't just barge in here with an army. I'll call corporate. I'll call the mayor." Deputy Chief Sterling stepped forward, his badge glinting under the lights. "You can save your calls for your attorney, Mr. Holt, but right now you're going to answer the captain's questions." "Captain?" Holt blinked, his eyes darting between Eliza and Sterling. What, Captain?" Eliza pulled her gold shield from her pocket. She didn't flash it quickly. She held it up, letting the light catch the heavy brass, letting the inscription burn into Holt's retinas. "Captain, Narcotics Division, City Police." "Captain Eliza Vaughn," she said, "and you, Zachary Holt, are in a world of trouble." Mila Ford, the young sales associate, peeked out from the stockroom. When she saw Eliza standing there, badge in hand, a look of pure shock and then overwhelming relief washed over her face. She covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Eliza caught her eye and gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "I told you I wasn't going anywhere." You're a cop?" Holt whispered, the reality of his situation crashing down on him like a collapsing building. "But you were wearing the tracksuit." "It's called a day off, Zachary," Eliza said coldly. "But criminals don't take days off, do they? Tell me about the scarf." The scarf?" Holt swallowed hard. It must have been a mistake, a misunderstanding. We can drop the charges. I'll write a letter of apology. We can offer you store credit." Eliza laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Store credit? You think this is about a refund? We watched the tapes, Zachary. We saw you trigger the alarm manually. We saw you lie to the officer." She took a step closer, invading his space just as Ward had invaded hers. "But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is why." Eden Laurent stepped up, holding the tablet. "We just cross-referenced your inventory logs with your insurance claims for the last 6 months, Mr. Holt. You've reported over $50,000 in theft losses, mostly scarves, belts, small leather goods." Holt's knees began to buckle. He grabbed the counter for support. "But here's the twist," Eden continued, her voice sharp. "The inventory isn't being stolen by shoplifters. It's being sold. Online. Through a shell account registered to an address in your name." The silence in the store was deafening. The customers were listening with rapt attention. This was better than any reality TV show. "You were stealing the merchandise yourself," Eliza said, putting the pieces together for the audience. "And to cover the inventory gaps, you staged false shoplifting incidents. You profiled customers, people you thought wouldn't fight back, people the police would automatically suspect. You framed them, got them arrested, and used the police reports as proof of theft to claim insurance money and cover your own embezzlement." "No," Holt whispered, tears streaming down his face. "No, that's not. I didn't." "We found the stolen teal scarf in your office safe, Zachary," Eden said, delivering the final blow, "along with a dozen other items marked as stolen in the system." Eliza looked at Holt with absolute disgust. "You destroyed lives to pad your bank account. You used my officers as your personal cleanup crew. You played on their prejudices to make them your accomplices." She turned to Sterling. "I'm done talking to him." Sterling nodded to the officers. "Zachary Holt, you are under arrest for grand larceny, insurance fraud, filing false police reports, and conspiracy. Cuff him." As the officers grabbed Holt, he didn't fight. He collapsed, sobbing loudly, begging for mercy, begging for a deal. It was a pathetic display, stripping away the veneer of the sophisticated luxury manager to reveal the coward underneath. As they dragged him out, passing the stunned customers, Eliza turned to the counter. Mila Ford was standing there, trembling. "Mila," Eliza said softly. "I'm sorry," Mila cried. I knew he was doing something bad. I was just so scared of losing my job. I need this job." "You don't have to apologize," Eliza said gently. "You tried to warn me. That matters." Eliza pulled a card from her pocket, her personal business card. "You're going to need to give a statement. Tell the truth. Tell them everything he did. And Mila, if corporate tries to fire you for cooperating with the police, you call this number. I know some very good lawyers who would love to sue this company into the ground." Mila took the card, clutching it like a lifeline. Thank you, Captain." Eliza turned and walked out of the store, the cool night air hitting her face. The nightmare was over, but the work was just beginning. The fallout was swift, brutal, and public. The video of Eliza's arrest, filmed by the teenager on the sidewalk, went viral before she had even left the precinct. By the next morning, it had 10 million views. The image of a calm, compliant black woman being shoved against a window by a screaming officer while a smug security guard watched ignited a firestorm. But the second wave of news, the revelation that the woman was a decorated police captain and that the theft was a cover for an embezzlement ring, turned the firestorm into a supernova. Officer Miles Beckett didn't last 48 hours. The internal affairs investigation was the fastest in the department's history. Faced with the security footage, the false report, and the testimony of his own sergeant, the union refused to back him. He was fired, stripped of his pension, and charged with felony assault and deprivation of civil rights. His trial was a spectacle. Beckett, who had spent his career bullying people in courtrooms, looked small and terrified at the defense table. He tried to plead that he was following protocol, but the prosecution played the tape of him mocking Eliza, ignoring her ID, and using excessive force. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Miles Beckett was sentenced to 5 years in state prison. The hunter was now the caged. Austin Ward, the security guard, turned state's witness immediately. He sang like a bird, detailing every instruction Zachary Holt had ever given him. He admitted to profiling customers at Holt's direction. He admitted to pressing the alarm button. In exchange for his testimony, he got a reduced sentence, 2 years of probation and a lifetime ban from working in security. He ended up working the night shift at a scrapyard, watching garbage instead of Gucci. But the heaviest hammer fell on Zachary Holt. The forensic accounting investigation unraveled a scheme that went back 3 years. Holt had stolen over $400,000 worth of merchandise. He had framed 7 different people before Eliza, mostly teenagers and minority women. 5 of them had pleaded guilty to misdemeanors just to avoid jail time. Their lives had been derailed, their records stained, because of his greed. Holt's defense attorney tried to argue insanity, stress, anything. It didn't stick. The judge, a stern woman who had seen the video of Holt smirking while Eliza was handcuffed, showed no mercy. "You didn't just steal property, Mr. Holt," the judge said at sentencing. "You stole justice. You stole freedom. You perverted the very system designed to protect society." Zachary Holt was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for wire fraud and civil rights violations. As he was led away in an orange jumpsuit, a far cry from his Italian suits, he looked into the gallery. Eliza was there. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just watched him disappear through the door, the final closing of the loop. For Velour and Vault, the PR disaster was total. The brand's stock dipped 15% in a week. To save face, the corporate office fired the entire regional management team. They issued a public apology to Eliza and the other victims. They offered a substantial settlement to avoid a lawsuit that would keep their name in the headlines for years. Eliza took the settlement. It was a staggering amount of money, more than she would make in 20 years of police work. She didn't buy a boat. She didn't buy a bigger house. She returned to the 12th precinct the next Monday, her arm in a sling, her head held high. When she walked into the bullpen, the room went silent. Then, one by one, her detectives stood up. They started clapping. It wasn't a polite golf clap. It was a thunderous ovation of respect. Eliza walked to her office, Aiden Laurent at her side. "You know," Eden said, leaning against the doorframe, "you could retire. With that settlement money, you could move to an island and drink coconuts." Eliza looked at her badge sitting on the desk. She thought about the 7 other victims Holt had framed, people who didn't have a badge to save them. She thought about the look in Mila Ford's eyes. "I'm not going anywhere," Eliza said, sitting down. "We have work to do. There are a lot of Miles Becketts out there, and I have a lot of free time." 6 months later, the Vaughn Legal Defense Fund opened its doors in a renovated brick building downtown. It was a non-profit organization funded entirely by Eliza's settlement money. Its mission, to provide top-tier legal representation for victims of racial profiling and wrongful arrest. Eliza stood in the back of the room during the opening ceremony. The place was packed. Community leaders, activists, and citizens filled the space. In the front row sat 3 young women, the previous victims of Zachary Holt. Their records had been expunged thanks to Eliza's testimony and the work of the new foundation. They were crying, hugging their families. They had their lives back. Mila Ford was there, too. She was no longer a frightened sales clerk. She was the office manager for the foundation, running the intake desk with a smile that was genuine and fearless. Deputy Chief Sterling stood at the podium. Many people, when faced with injustice, choose to move on, Sterling said into the microphone. They choose to survive, and no one blames them. But some people choose to turn their pain into a shield for others. Captain Eliza Vaughn didn't just fight for herself that day in the boutique. She fought for everyone who has ever been judged by their appearance instead of their character. Eliza stepped outside for a moment of air. The city noise washed over her. She touched her wrist. The physical scars from the handcuffs were gone, faded into her skin, but the memory remained, a constant reminder of the thin line between order and tyranny. A young rookie cop was walking the beat nearby. He saw Eliza standing there. He recognized her. He stopped, straightened his uniform, and snapped a sharp, respectful salute. "Evening, Captain," he said. Eliza looked at him. She saw the nervousness, the respect. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Good evening, officer," she said. "Stay safe out there, and keep your eyes open." "Yes, ma'am." As the officer walked away, Eliza took a deep breath. She looked at the sign above the door, "Justice for All." She checked her watch. It was late, but the lights inside were bright, the phones were ringing, and there were people who needed help. Captain Eliza Vaughn turned around and walked back into the fight. The story of Eliza Vaughn is a reminder that authority without accountability is tyranny. It reminds us that prejudice is a blindfold that hides the truth, often with devastating consequences. But more importantly, it shows that one person, armed with dignity and the truth, can dismantle even the most entrenched systems of corruption. Justice isn't given. It's forged in the fire of courage. If this story fired you up, make sure to hit that like button. It helps us expose more stories like this. Did you think the punishment for Holt and Beckett was enough? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of karma hitting back. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.